Do it.
It is such a joy to see you all here. Thank you so much for coming out. This is our Tuesday 7 p.m. seminar series. It happens all throughout the summer, and the best part is like the people who come along. So thank you so much for showing up. We have a fabulous, awesome topic. It's I feel a really important topic about science communication and how we really get people to invest and understand and get excited about science. Our presenter this evening is Kirstynn Joseph. Kirstynn is our Banff Marine Sciences Center communications coordinator and has such a fascinating career of how to use a background in science and a background in communication and teaching and arts and just being so creative and really awesome, and we're delighted to hear from her this evening. So please welcome Kirstynn.
Hello everybody, as Grace mentioned, I'm Kirstynn. I'm super grateful to be here in front of all you folks on the traditional territory of the Banff First Nations, and just here with the tent audience, hopefully here to have a little bit of fun, have a good time, talk about science communication. If you get offended by world-class academic speak called little nerds, you might want to leave the room. We're just gonna have a good time. So yeah, all right, so it's been a minute since I've given a presentation, and this got put together a little bit last minute, so bear with me. All right, so science and scientists are a bunch of really beautiful, amazing things. They advance our world in many ways, but we're not exactly well known for our ability to communicate the science that we do. So this is one of my favorite originals. First we do the science, and then we write about the science, and then no one understands the science. Wait, okay. Back it up a little bit. Science not only isn't always well understood, but a lot of times it's very siloed off. And this is a comic I found a long time ago that I really loved and love to reference, and just depicts Rapunzel up in her tower, and it says, after earning her PhD, Rapunzel was right at home in her academic ivory tower. And for those of you that aren't super familiar, science does tend to silo itself off from the rest of, we're going to use the word general public kind of between quotations, because I know that's a broad term, but we put ourselves in this tower and we don't actually interact with anybody else. But why should we care? So we have our little nerd circles, and we share our results, and we publish in a journal that goes to other people that know about that journal, and it stays in that bubble. But do we care that it just stays there? Why should it go beyond that bubble? And I'm wondering, I want to kind of pick from the audience right off the bat and get you guys talking a little bit, why you think it's important to engage with people in an interesting and engaging way. So does anybody have any thoughts on why we should communicate our science? Does anyone want to jump in?
To get money.
To get money, exactly. That is actually one of the points we're going to get into. So we want to communicate about our science for money. We will elaborate on that in a moment.
To bring trust to our work.
Trust to our work, exactly. To get the public to believe in science and trust science. One and the two.
To bring awareness to the things that need awareness.
Exactly. So sometimes we do research and science on a very important topic, and then it just stays in this little bubble, and then nobody is aware of that thing. And I think you're stolen. You have a better idea?
That's exactly what I was going to say. But I guess another one would be then you get more diverse perspectives coming in as well.
Huge. I love that. Absolutely. But we're back there. It also makes science more accessible as well, like science jargon terms. People are I have no idea what the heck this means. Exactly. I don't understand. I get it. Yeah, if you're a nuclear physicist and you're talking to somebody who could be the best biologist in the world, if you're using physics jargon, that translation isn't happening and people aren't understanding, you're basically speaking a different language. So we want to make it accessible. Does anyone else want to go before we move along? This good? Okay, great. So I do actually have some thoughts, just kidding. We're going to do a bit of a rough list, and then I'm going to break down some of these in a little bit of a deeper way. One of them is help keep stakeholders in the loop. So, for example, maybe you're out here in Barkley Sound doing some really interesting research. You want to let the people that live in this community know about what's going on, the people that fish in this community, the people that rely on these systems that we're studying. So we want to keep those people in the loop. Informing much fish you can take out of an area, and then if we do that research and then it doesn't go anywhere and nobody communicates what we found, then we're not able to actually implement any rules that help that. So we're just kind of like throwing it out into the void, which doesn't do much good. This is another one. You want to communicate better science to help your students, your lecturer attendants, your peers not fall asleep in the middle of your talk, which is a little bit not fun, if that's ever happened to you. You want to foster participation in citizen science projects, build trust in science like we talked about, and also we want to fight misinformation and problematic and sometimes potentially dangerous misunderstandings from research findings. And we can dig into that a little bit more after. But really, like, we just want people to understand, like, what we're talking about. If we use a word and then don't break that down and explain it better, it might get put in the wrong context and misunderstood. Hate to bring COVID into it like everybody does, but I don't know if a bunch of y'all remember there was a project that came out and the researchers found that heat and alcohol could kill the virus. And people then took that if they drink a bunch of booze in the sun, then they would be okay. So this is where we need to really make sure that we're talking to people in a way that makes sense and not putting up these terrible headlines. And show me the money. More selfishly, we want grants. We want to be able to move our money forward, and not just in the way of writing grants for scholarships to get money from other like academic institutions, but sometimes donors want to donate to science, but they need to know why they should care. And one that we don't always think about so much is actually a really important way to help improve your portfolio and your CV if you're a student or a researcher, whether that's undergrad or grad school. When you go and do these projects, say maybe you've published like 5 or 6 papers, and then maybe you don't want to keep going in academia. You have all these skills and you want to go to industry, but you need to be able to translate how that research you did and those things that you found are like impactful and important for the world, or how those steps that you did make you a good problem solver, and how the methodology that you used is like better than another methodology in a way that's not just going to be the jargon that was used in the paper that would make sense only to another biologist, ecologist, physicist. So there's lots of different reasons you want to do a good job communicating science, and that's just not necessarily in a humorous way, but just in general. Basically, why should anyone care what researchers are doing if they never hear about it? And probably worse if they hear about it and they don't know what's going on. So, our lovely WTF cat, we know it's not a cat, no one knows what it is, it's fine. When none of the grant budget includes communicating about the project. We want to know what happened, or it's just, again, just a little ball thrown into a trench. So, moving at science communication to the rescue. And science communication is now kind of this entire field that's been created around communicating science to different audiences, whether that's the public or whether that's you trying to explain to your grandma like why it's pretty neat that you have a bunch of invertebrates in a little tub and then you're like changing the heat of the water, and why you're spending thousands of dollars on this degree to do so, that you don't get this look. And then it exists in museums, it's social media, it's blogs, it's podcasts, it's anywhere that you want it to be. Basically can be science communication. So, your audience can be really different, and this depends on who you're looking for, but these are just some fun little examples. Like your peers that you're working with, just because they're studying the same thing as you, they might not actually know what you did. And realistically, your science communication is just like, people just want to know what you're up to and why. So you have your peers, you have stakeholders that we talked about, they should probably know what's going on, maybe they don't, people in other fields. Just because someone's a scientist doesn't mean they understand your science, right, or your research. So you want to be able to open up more collaborations as well by talking about the things that you're doing. Your PI really doesn't know what you're up to, so you want to talk about that. And then, again, the general public. The only reason they don't know what you're up to is because you're not telling them, or you're not telling them well. So these are the people that we want to communicate to. Now, one way you can communicate with some of these groups is through a little bit of humor, and that's kind of the topic of today's little seminar, is how we can make things just a little bit more fun. Sometimes you can just make it a bit more fun, and it's not just because we want to be silly and it's fun for us to like throw up little memes and spend our time making jokes with each other, but there's actually a lot more power to be held in making things like funny and making things approachable and relatable than you might think. So, you know, we have our sitcom with some humor and some without. Take a pick. So for me, there was one moment when I like really realized that humor could be really important in science communication in general. And I've always been like a little bit of a silly goose, and so I like to throw up a little meme or make a little reel or do something around my communications. But I was in this entomology conference in Ecuador where I was living at the time, and I was doing a research project on citizen science. So we were getting students to collect little ants and then tell us like where the prevalence of that was. And then I was in this conference, and picture this, it's right before coffee break, day 2. Everyone's tired, half asleep, potentially hungover. If you've ever been to a conference, scientists like to party when they're at a conference, and they're sitting there, and it's just dull eyes in the room. So I'm a little nervous. I get up there. It's my basically first conference presentation and in my second language, but I had a tool. So I introduce my topic. We move along a little bit. People are paying attention because they're polite, and throw up me. I was talking about an invasive ant species, but I was also talking about just the prevalence of invasive species around the world, and a cat, the domestic cat, loose, can be considered an invasive species. But I threw this meme up, and you can see the room just change and come alive, because people are like, oh, what's that? Oh, that's funny, haha. Or if they don't understand the reference, but there's just this like click of I'm ready to pay a little bit more attention now. And so I had a couple more memes like sprinkled throughout the chat or throughout the conversation throughout the presentation. Try that, take 3. And not enough to like take away from the science. You know, I still had a study methods and results section and everything, but just to keep the people engaged. After the conference, I had 2 or 3 peers come up to me and say it was amazing. I actually made memes for like 5 other presentations so that the rest of the entomology conference had like these memes all sprinkled throughout it. And that was kind of the point where I was like, wow, this is like really powerful. And this was in a peer setting where these people should have been super interested and engaged in what we're talking about. Now, think about doing that and translating that to a completely different audience who isn't into like learning about insects and trying to make them talk with that. So that's when I really grasped that this is like pretty powerful. So I know this is like a big list, but I'll do like a break it down a little bit afterwards. But why humor? In case you can't quite see the back, and for the lady, perhaps something a little more serious, perhaps not. So using humor is really powerful. It helps you remember things. You can connect hard concepts to something familiar, relatable. It gets the audience's attention, as I mentioned before, either to start, to grab their attention, or to kind of wake them up midway through lecture, conference, press release. Helps make a tough subject more approachable as well, which we also talked about, something a little bit more fun, sparks interest, and it can help us bond over similar issues as well. There's kind of this themes and memes. And then so it's like, oh, I know that meme and I have that same problem. So somebody else has the same problem that I do, which is great. Yeah, so you guys, most of us have seen a meme, we've made a meme, we've loved a meme, but do we really know what a meme is, like deep down inside? And we're about to tell you. So this is just a very, very brief history of a meme. I'm not gonna like dive into it like crazy, but it's actually a little closer to a scientist's heart than you might think. So Richard Dawkins actually invented this meme in his book, The Selfish Gene. So according to him, memes are the equivalent of genes for ideas in society. So genes as in genetics, like a gene that has an allele that is like passed down to their offspring. So you have to define the meme as something that conveys the idea of like a unit of cultural transmission or a unit of imitation. So a meme is like some kind of picture or something in society, and that can like be carried on or it can die out. So basically, what he's looking at is these ideas are in competition with one another, and you know, I'm sure you guys have seen there's been memes that have lived around for like 10 years, and there's some that kind of spark up and they're fun for a bit and they're trending and they die out, and then there's some audios that go on forever and ever. So a meme can actually kind of be a novelist to something that goes through a process of natural selection, and at the end of the day is like more popular or it's not. You can choose like a pretty standard one that's been around forever, so just as a quick example. Now, in the internet era, a meme is, often an image, it's a photo, it's a drawing, it's a scene from a movie, sometimes it's a little clip. now as well in TikTok and Instagram. Sometimes it's just like an audio. No one really knows what's going to be popular, and it just catches off. Like you guys remember, nobody beats a J2 holiday. That just exploded. No one could have predicted that, but it did well. It survived. It got naturally selected and moves through and becomes something that everyone recognizes. Each of them end up having kind of like a theme and a tone to it usually, and a bunch of context can be thrown over top of it. Now the context is sometimes derived like directly from that scene of a movie or that picture, or sometimes it's something that develops over time, but you definitely know that there's a tone or to a meme, and you can use that to your advantage, which we'll talk about towards the end. So backing up again, why should we communicate science like we mean it? We want to use humor to engage your audience. You have a boring chemistry lecture? No problem. You're trying to describe how different atoms and compounds are working together in the environment. Throw out this need. That hydrogen is not sticking around with H2O. It wants to go over to the hydroxide. And this is just something that sticks in your head. And whether it's a student writing an exam that literally is going to picture this, or the student that was half asleep in the back that's looking at it now, they're going to enjoy that. Help you remember better. References are everything. And like, if you think about jingles or movies or things, pedagogy tells us again and again that you have to relate something to something you already know. Like a really basic example we can break down is if a teacher's doing math on the chalkboard and it's like 2 + 2 = 4. They're just these numbers. But what would the problem be? It would be Jimmy has 2 cookies and his friend brings 2 more cookies and there are 4 cookies and now there's 6 and they want to divide it because it's painting this picture of something that you know. You know cookies, you've broken a cookie, you've eaten a cookie before, whereas like just looking at these blank things is terrible. And so in this reference, an ANOVA is a type of statistical test that is often run in ecology, and the data needs to be normally distributed for that. And this isn't something, if you're not going to do stats, you have to worry about too much, but you have to make sure that your data looks like this, or you can't put it into that test. So now, the next time somebody's going to go run an ANOVA, they're like, did we check for normality? Because Boromir is like, no, like you do not simply run this ANOVA. And so it's just giving people these little references or funny little tidbits that help them connect to that, like in a new way. Get the youth interested and exposed to STEM. Like we said, you know, STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, tends to be this like super thought of like it's for smart people and it's off in this corner. How many times have you heard someone be like, oh, I didn't do marine biology because math is hard and science is hard, or I could never pay attention in this class. And if we can just like spark that interest just a little bit earlier, if we can get them excited about that, you know, take a pop culture reference like Fry here, you know, she asked me for time distance, she's trying to calculate velocity. This is a basic physics principle, and it's like, wait, what does that mean? It sparks this kind of interest, and you realize that things that can seem really complicated can be a lot more simple. You can also make new concepts just like a little bit more relatable. So I have this one, which is a pretty common like template from The Office, and it's showing you a hoverfly versus a bee. Now, a hoverfly is this super cute little fly that mimics a bee. And why would it do that? Because it wants to trick the bird into thinking that it's a bee. So it looks like it's a big scary bee that has a big stinger and is either going to taste really bad or actually bite that to the bee. And these two things are different. So this is a brand new concept, Bayesian mimicry. You've never heard of it before, but now you can be like, oh, right, the bird thinks that it's the same picture. So it's just making your concepts more relatable, bringing it to something that you've seen before. And as we said before, just making it more approachable. This is in Spanish because I gave this talk once in Spanish and I was too lazy to change it out. So if I was to go to someone and be like, oh, did you know the structure of an atom? And boom, shut off, brick wall, that's it. But I could be like, hey, cute birds. And then they're like, oh, that's cute, what's that? And this is actually what the structure looks like. The neutron and the proton hanging out here, and the electron is the thing over there. And then you just spark enough of that interest to make it more approachable, make it not seem so scary, and move on. Another thing that humor does that's really neat for us is it makes it easier to talk about like difficult or like tricky subjects. On kind of a little bit of a side quest tangent. Like fantasy does a really similar thing. Like you'll see a lot of fantasy writers talk about like really hard issues like racism and people working together and these different things by using like elves and dwarves and different things to fight through and try and talk about these difficult issues that you don't want to face right away. And so putting this little bit of humor gives this sort of like cushion and gap to be able to talk about things that are a bit hard and people might just be like, oh, leave that alone. There's a huge battle just in the world with ornamental plants that have become these really crazy invasive species or just that are completely non-beneficial to an ecosystem. If anybody's drove up lately and they see all the Scotch broom like on the side of the mountain, everyone would be like, that's so pretty. And then it's like, if you know about it, you have like the dark face and you're like, I hate that thing so much. But you can have these beautiful, beneficial, low maintenance, amazing native plants in the urban Arctic context are like, no. And so this thing just can be that little trigger to help open up a conversation in a more gentle way. This one is one, there was a little bit of a trend a little while ago, especially in the wild green means for ecological fiends, which is a great group and I recommend joining, that people were making these Halloween costumes, and this lady cactus full of creations, she does some really cool stuff around like field work and what it's like to be a biologist and why it's so difficult. And so she had this great one that, you know, the field biologist, you get an animal and you get a tick that you'll find later, does not include fair pay or enough sleep. So this is haha, we get a little bit of a PTSD chuckle if any of us have ever done field work or done unpaid work or difficult work. But it's still bringing to light this issue and helping people be more aware of it without it feeling like it's getting like a slap in the face about the issue. As we mentioned before, you want to grab or recapture audience attention. So this one's in Spanish as well. So collections of museums pay amazing attention to reptiles, birds, and mammals, and they leave insects there just drowning. This is one of the memes that I did help create for my friend in his talk about arachnid collections in Ecuador, because arachnids are left. So again, this is just a way to kind of capture that audience. You know, we hear over and over again, like, people aren't paying enough attention to the bugs and drone and drone and drone. But just to make it a little bit more fun and relatable, we can do that. The other way is to ignite curiosity, and you could kind of just like relate this to like FOMO, like give people the fear of missing out. If you have something really cool you want to share on Instagram or in a podcast or on your website or with your class, and it's likely that as soon as you kind of start droning off about this like boring subject and they're going to drop off, then you can like throw up a little meme. And some people would be like, oh, if you make it too niche, nobody's going to get the joke and it's not funny. But if it is a meme and it's a template that people have seen and used before, then they're going to be intrigued by it. And they're going to be like, there's nothing worse than not getting the joke, right? They're like, oh, I don't get that. So then you click the caption, you read it, you dig more, you go down the rabbit hole. It's 2 in the morning and you know so much about how Rosalind Frank was basically screwed for her contributions to discovering the structure of DNA. Feel free to look into it, but not now because you're in intensive courses and you probably have homework. This is another one I made that I love just to intrigue people. It's the beautiful lives of arachnids again. So female spiders are requesting your dance, may we mate? And then I can go, or we can mate, then I can go, right? Right? What happens to the spiders? I don't know. Basically, spoiler alert, females will often eat the male spider after they mate. Just a fun way to get people's attention, get them listening to the important thing you're saying, and then they'll be intrigued enough to care about and be aware about the thing that they should be aware about. This maybe they don't really need to be aware about, but I think everyone needs more spider facts in their life. This maybe isn't as much like science communication, but more for like in the science community or in any kind of community. You can like bond over like difficult struggles. And I think it can be really important to like bring to light things that are like difficult as a grad student or as a student or as a scientist. There's so many memes. If you look up coding memes, it's out of control. Like coders just love to meme and they love to hate coding. So you know when you get mad at your code for doing exactly what I coded it to do with the code,
that did exactly what I wanted it to do, because you wanted it to give you a different result. And this one is one of my favorites that I found recently and even included in my staff newsletter as a little like heat to my boss. 2 types of academic feedback. So there's just this way for people to be like, oh, someone else has that issue. And again, humor just creates a little bit of a buffer, so we feel like we don't have to have that hard conversation maybe right off the bat, but you can find a place and a space to be able to share it in a way that's more comfortable. And sometimes just to have fun. Once I was repping my BMSC hoodie, and my partner said I looked like a rocket pop, and then my friend proceeded to make this meme to talk about common examples of convergent evolution, where things appear over various time periods. So a little bit of light bullying is always good, just so you can better understand the psychological principles. So it's all about the end goal. This is the huge one that did come up, and it's just helping the public be interested and trust in science again. I think, you know, bringing ourselves to a level where we say, I like to make memes and make jokes, and I'm not some scientist up in an ivory tower, and you can trust me, is really, really important. And especially in a time where everybody is like big fish and big urchin, and everybody is so scared about what science is doing and who they're doing it for. So it's just a way to be like, I'm literally you, just with a different path, and this is like a fun way that I want to tell you about what I'm doing. And so, you know, like what channels did you use to share about your research results? Just the journal article? Not good. No, we want people to be told about the research that's going on. Now, you might be wondering, probably not, but maybe, can you mean wrong? Can you do a wrong thing? Not really, because you're having fun, but kind of. So as I mentioned before, a lot of memes do have sort of a theme or a context that you kind of have to get, or it just like doesn't land right, especially if you're trying to communicate like science, like an actual issue. If you're just trying to bond over like how hard coding is, like maybe it's not as big of a deal. But because memes can be captioned around like any subject, it's a bit tricky, but there's a theme on how to get it. And I'm just gonna go over like one little fun example to kind of tell you what I mean, and then you can go. As a disclaimer, since you're having fun, you're just memeing, it's all good. Like, you're not really doing it wrong, and I don't want anybody to like not make a science meme because they're like scared of like messing it up, but there is a little bit more of a right and a wrong way. Has anyone here heard about the fish salmon before? Everybody? Okay, everyone's heard of a salmon. Lovely, great. Okay, that's a good step, seeing as you're studying that field. Please forgive, these are just like Canva graphics. Don't send the fish police after me if these are like different species. That's not important here. Basically, we all know that salmon, when they run upriver, there's females and males. The females kind of stay as they are, and then the sexual dimorphism, which is the difference in how they look, changes a lot as they go upstream. So the males in some species get these crazy humps and these big mouths, and then they are super, super sexy and ready to fight off the other males for the female. Now, has anybody heard about sneaker male salmon before? Okay, so this is kind of a fun little topic. There's you and me, and then there's Steve, which is a reference. Feel free to take a peek at that and stamp those away. I'm watching those reels later. Now, these sneaker males do a thing where basically they don't get these crazy dimorphisms. They still sort of look like a female salmon. And what they do is when the males are having this crazy showdown and fighting for the right to fertilize the female's eggs, they just sort of slip in there and fertilize them and run away because the males don't notice that they're male. So if you wanted to try to explain this topic, and you try to use distracted boyfriend, which is this meme, it's not really quite right. Why? The female salmon aren't like into the sneaker males. They're not leaving the regular males for that, right? That's what this meme's theme is sort of pointing out. This meme, subject A is ignoring or not paying attention to subject B for subject C. That doesn't really quite work because this would be saying that the sneaker males are advantageous or more attractive to the females. an example that could work for this, has anybody heard about when you ban birds, if there's a difference in the attraction? Do you know what it is? Does someone want to? No? Okay. So sometimes when birds get banded for research purposes, they're starting to find now that these birds will be more reproductively successful. So the females will like choose them. It's like they got a little Rolex and the females are like, hey, and then they end up mating with these banded birds more often. So if I was doing a banded bird meeting and I was like banded birds, non-banded birds, female birds, that one would work. But so this is it making sense that there's sort of a theme, there's sort of an idea here. So what could we do to talk about a natural selection process that chooses one phenotype over another? Kombucha girl. Kombucha girl meme is this one. So unattractive option, putting massive amounts of energy into growing like crazy and fighting other males for the right to fertilize eggs, or just kind of looking like a female sneaking by and fertilizing them anyways. Looks like a much more attractive option. This better lays down that ecological principle, right? It's like, maybe not, I could just do that instead, and it just helps tell the subject a little more. There's also the Drake like bling, which is the same idea. This is just worded differently, but essentially, being a sneaker male says you don't want to put all that energy. It's more advantageous for you to just have that phenotype sneak in and fertilize anyway. So that is kind of a little breakdown on how some memes just like don't quite fit the theme. And if you're ever not sure, just like Google some memes, you know, go on the internet for a bit. If you need to set yourself like a screen time password, I understand, it's all good. But do a little bit of research and see what works and what feels good to do it, and then just go ahead. And like I said, it's not the end of the world if it's something backwards. You just want people to be excited about and approach your communication topic a little bit better. So how do you get started? You just gotta do it. Honestly, just start. If you want to do science communication to any extent, whether that's just like making a meme and putting it in the Slack channel if you're in a course, if you want to talk a little bit about your experience out here, your research, if you want to put it in your end presentations. I'm not sure how the profs feel about that, but I have a feeling that they're going to find out. Just get started. Rob Nelson, who's like a friend and like long team time kind of client, peer colleague of mine, is really good at always saying this, that you just have to do it. And the first time you do any kind of science communication, it might be bad, and that's okay too. I actually did have a podcast. If you guys want to hear it, I can show it to you later. But some of those episodes are terrible. The sound quality is really bad and scratchy. We mess up. But I learned so much from this like beautiful process of just doing the thing, and had like 80 people download and listen to it, and it's great. And then you come into yourself and you learn these things, and at some point you like become the self-proclaimed meme expert, even though nobody asked, and it's really fun. So yeah, you can do science communication in a ton of ways. Social media, it can be podcasts, it can be blogs, any way that you want to. But I do definitely recommend so much that you just take a little bit of time to find a way to slip just a little bit of humor in there. It can be a comic, it can be a doodle, it doesn't have to be a meme, but it's probably the easiest way to kind of have that in for people to get into that. So, you know, there's always kind of this debate around whether scientists should be activists and communicate the thing, but yes, you should. Do the research, communicate about what you did. I'm not saying you have to take like a political stance and what needs to be done with that, but if you're just screaming into the void about this crazy, beautiful thing that we do, that's science, and coming up with these results and not sharing them with the world, then you're not really doing much, right? Like, we want to do the most. So that's my 2 cents on that. Now, very literally, if you want to communicate science a little bit more, I'm going to put a little plug in here. There is a science communication course that's a 3-week course that is happening in the last block here. My dear friend Alex Gaines, who is just like this Instagram, like TikTok superstar in science communication, is going to be giving that course, and so it's going to be writing, it's going to be production, and all these different things over the 3 weeks. So that's going to be really fun. And then we do also have a SciComm workshop that's happening for 5 days in the fall. So if anybody wants more information on that, let me know. but you don't need training. Realistically, I was an ecologist. I had a background in science and like adapted through my life history and just like fell into communications and learned these things on my own. And so as much as it's important to read books and get tools, the human being is a communicator and that's what makes us human. And so just like reach in there and find a way to like share your story with the world. I'm not sure how to do time. This is me being very serious in the Galapagos Islands. Thank you everyone so much for coming out and listening to this. I hope you found something useful. I hope you had a little chuckle. If you want, those are just like my socials and my website and such, and I'm super happy to answer any questions.